What's going on today, guys? It's the Director 6, and we're going to do a video as if you had never seen Lightroom in your entire life. This video is for that person that just picked up a camera and is looking for the very first time to edit their photos, okay? And we're going to get right into it, guys. So if you need to go to the washroom, grab your bottle of water, whatever it is that you need to do, because we're going to get right into it. By the way, the model that we're using today in this photo is Katie Price. You're going to find her information right in the description below. If you guys want to go follow her on Instagram, tell her I said hello from the Director 6. All right, guys, here we go. So at the very top right corner of Lightroom, you're going to find what we call the histogram. Now, the histogram tells you when your information is clipping, meaning in the whites or the blacks. Once something is clipping, the information is completely gone, meaning that even if you lower that information in, I guess, luminosity or whatever, you're not going to get that information back. Luckily, because we are not clipping in this picture, we don't have that problem. But I want to show you guys what it's going to look like in the case that you do clip your image. Essentially, what it's going to look like is like this. This top right corner indicator is going off. If I hover over it, it will actually show you what information is clipping, meaning that if we had clipped and this piece of wood was in focus, you wouldn't be able to get the information back. In the polar opposite side of things, if we do it with our blacks, you'll see that it indicates that this is clipping as well. However, the way we took the image was not clipping, so we can retain that information once again. By the way, if you double click on any one of these things, it will always reset back to 0. All right, so that's basically it when it comes to clipping, which we can have a whole nother video on a little bit more in detail. But again, we're just talking about how we're editing this photo, what we're going to do. So guys, the very first thing I like to do once we have established that our photo is not clipped, because if you have one that's not clipped, you might want to pick that one, is our composition, right? Is this composition what I want it to be? Obviously, you guys, you want to shoot for getting it right on camera, but in case you need to make little adjustments, meaning that if your photo is crooked, you could do that right here with the crop overlay. You could press R, or you could just go ahead and click it. I click it, whatever, it's not a big deal. And the way that I'm going to establish whether this is crooked or not, as you can see in my rule of thirds, you could see this piece of wood is kind of bent this way. So we're just going to go ahead and try it straightened out. We went a little bit overboard. Let's bring that back over there. Perfect. The photo's completely straight. I love it. We're going to move on and drop the basics panel. And the next thing we're going to very much do, and again, I work linearly from top to bottom, which means we're going to go ahead and start with white balance. Now, what you want to do with white balance is that you want to pick or choose from something that actually you knew was white on the day that you were there. And what Lightroom will do, it will adjust the temperature and tint based on what you use for reference. Obviously, the best way to do that is to have a white card with you on that day and take a picture of it in that environment and then use that as reference. However, we don't have that. But what we do know is that as long as somebody doesn't have jaundice, that their eyes should be white. So we're going to go ahead and grab this little dropper tool right here and drop it on the eyeball. And we're going to see what that did. Already looking great. Unless you want it warmer, but again, we're going for, we're going for this look. So already, colors have already been pushed right into the right place. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn the exposure a little bit up. Again, we're pushing everything a little bit up in the histogram. You can see it actually moving. And we're going to turn the contrast slightly up, adding a little bit more dimension into the photo interface. You could just see a little bit more of a 3D effect. Now, we're going to, guys, the way that I've learned this is just by sliding everything back and forth and figuring out what looks good. Right? If you don't have your monitor calibrated, I mean, there's going to be things that look a little bit different from your computer screen onto your iPhone. So, you want to learn what works for you, right? In this case, we're going to go ahead and turn the highlights slightly up. We're going +6. And guys, don't take these settings and apply them onto a photo that you have. It's not going to work or look the same. Maybe it might, but chances are is that it won't look good. All right, guys, we're going to turn the shadows slightly up in this instance. And now what you want to do is when it comes to your whites and alt, typically I like to push them as far as they will go. I want to hold Alt and then push all the way to the right. And you're going to see all this blue stuff coming back in. And we're actually clipping. So we're going to just move it back till it disappears. Right about there. We're going to do the same thing with the blacks in the other direction. Slide them down. And right about there. Okay. You know what? I'm going to take these highlights and push them down a little bit. Slightly more. We're losing it a little bit in the shirt there. All right, guys. We're going to turn the saturation a little bit up. Get that nice skin tone going on. And that's it for basics. Let's check our work. I like what we're seeing. I'm going to go ahead and minimize the basics. Now, the tone curve. For those of you who don't know, and I did mention this in my last video, is that the tone curve very much works. See these pillars, these lines on the grid? It works. It goes from this way. It goes black, shadows, midtones, highlights, and whites. Meaning that if I do this, I'm crushing the blacks. But that's not what we're going to do. We're going to get a little bit more contrast by doing something that's widely used by virtually almost every photographer on the planet. But again, it's not a bad thing. We're going to add a little bit contrast using the tone curve. And we're going to push this up, and we're going to push a point down here. If you want to see how something is specifically affected by the tone curve, very much like the eyedropper tool that we use for white balance, you could click this little target board right here and click something and see if you go to the skin, it will very much show you that it's in the mid-tone area. So that will actually drop a point there for you, and then you can move it if that's what you want to do. But we're going to go ahead and just add a little bit of a tone of a S-curve here. And we're going to go back up to basics. You know, editing photos is very much a balancing game. Once you move something, you might want to go back and, you know, turn something up or down. So we're going to actually bring our contrast a little bit down because we're actually getting contrast from the tone curve itself. There it is. And there's our S-curve, and it's called an S-curve because it looks like an S. You could also do other things and create, you know, add more, you know, you could add more red into your highlights. You can add blues into your highlights. You can add greens, yellows, you know, whatever it is that you want to do. But we're not going to get right into the tone curve to that extent as of yet. That's a little bit more of an advanced technique. So we're just gonna live with the contrast at this point in time. Now, moving on to hue, saturation, and luminance based on color. If you go over here just to hue, we're going to start with just a hue. You're going to see that if I move orange, left or right, it's going to change the tone of our skin. Red, same thing. Yellow, same thing. Now, guys, you could use this to create a certain look for your images. You know, I have very much have changed summer into fall by just sliding, you know, the yellow and the green up onto the left side. As you can see, the reflection of the bushes here on the left side, they kind of went orange. So again, you could use this to create looks. You don't have to use it at all. I mean, you could still get great results without having to use it, but I do. So one way you might want to check your work is jump over to the saturation, turn everything down. At this point in time, make sure, number one, that your image looks good in black and white, right? This might be, you know, if you're a little bit more advanced and more familiar with Lightroom, this might be the first thing you do. It typically is for me, even though I do like to work linearly once it's black and white. But just make sure your image looks good in black and white. And then start adding the colors back. I already know I need red and orange to exist in my image. And again, we're double clicking red and orange to bring that back. We're going to bring back yellow, and you could see the bushes on that left side starting to come back. We're going to actually leave them a little bit low. See what these aquas do? See, the aquas are actually part of like the scaffolding on the wall or whatever it's called. And we're going to bring that saturation. Again, we're in the saturation panel, by the way, guys. We're going to bring the blue back for her blue jeans. Yeah, let's bring that up on full crank. And let's see what this purple does. So the purple is a shirt. We're going to... Let's bring that up like plus 11. And the magenta, we'll bring that up here. So this is actually what we're looking at now. And again, now we're going to touch the hue and make sure that things are like the look that we want to give it. I know I want to bring the yellows down. I want to bring the greens down a little bit. Give it more of that kind of fall look. Or do we actually want that? Yep, we want that fall look. We're going to do that. Do that a little bit right there. And see what this does. It's going to change the color of her pants. No, she's wearing blue jeans, not aqua jeans. And the luminance. So there's a few things people do. Some people turn up the luminance on oranges and make people's skin a little bit brighter, as you can see here. However, some people choose to do it with a filter. So if you wanted to, you could go over here to the masking tools and use a radial gradient, put it on her face, whoop, whoop, go exposure up, and then turn her face up that way. So again, that's something I'd be happy with. In fact, we're actually going to keep it this time. But while we are here, we're going to do something else to achieve the look that we are going for. We're going to click the mask once again. I want to make that sure that the person that you're having your image actually pops out of the frame. So what some people do is they just go ahead to the luminance panel and turn up the oranges. And you can see her skin's brightening up. Another technique somebody might use is going to the radial filters, radial mask, and that's done by clicking up here and going radial gradient. Once you select that, you push it over her face. You want to make sure that it's not too much affecting anything else around her, and you just want to turn the exposure up. And again, you see her face actually getting brighter. Now what we're going to do, guys, is click the plus sign up here, select subject. And this is just something I like to do. I don't do it for every single image I've ever edited, but for many of them. And as you can see, it selected a mask. We're going to invert that mask, select the things around her, and actually drop the exposure. Now, if you do this too far, it's gonna look like you used a speed light to take an image, and you don't want to do too much of that. You want a subtle effect, and it's gonna help her pop out of the frame a little bit. We're gonna go ahead and select this mask once more and drop a little bit. We'll select this mask and drop -50. By the way, guys, when you guys do select a mask, you guys will once again get exposure, contrast, highlight, shadows, white balance, texture, all that stuff controlled just for the filter. And you could see what it's affecting by just selecting the mask itself, and it will show you the red area that it's actually affecting. All right, guys. Now, once we're done with that, we're going to select this little indicator right here and make sure it goes away. And again, we're going to check our work before we move on to the next column. Day and night. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and select lens correction, remove chromatic aberrations, which I do actually like to use. If you don't know what a chromatic aberration is, they're more common in like your lower end lens. Like if you have a nifty 50, chances are that you're going to get sometimes they're purple or green, especially when you start pushing a image too far. I'm pretty sure this is chromatic aberration right here at the edge of this. You see there's like a little purple halo. Let's see, right there. It's going to be more evident in some photos. It's not that evident in this one, apparently. But yeah, you just want to make sure you select that. You can go edit profile correction. Basically what that does, from my understanding, and I could be wrong, so you photographers that are a little bit more experienced than I am, if you guys know what it does exactly, correct me. But from my understanding is that some lenses have some sort of distortion that happens on, the corners of the lenses, and it creates a little bit of a vignetting effect. And as you can see, if you go enable profile correction, it appears that it makes the picture brighter. And that's because it's actually brightening the areas where it got a little bit darker due to the vignette of the lens. And again, you can see here, Sony FE 50mm 1.8. That's what it's correcting. It has a profile already made. Transform, we don't need to do that in this case, but if you wanted to, you could, distort the image. But we're not distorting any images. We don't need that. And we're going to go, we missed a whole slider, details, which again is fine. We can always come back to details. It's not the end of the world. Basically what this does, it adds sharpening. And again, that's just right above it. If you click amount, it will give you an amount. Now, here is the little trick. I like to turn this up as much as I can without pushing it into the red area. And again, just like we did on the whites and the shadows, we're going to click masking, slide it all the way to the right, and we only want basically the traced outline of the details of our subject. That's good enough right there. That's what we want to do. You don't want to do this all the way to the left, because you're going to start getting all this grain in her pores and all this stuff, and we don't want any of that. So again, we're just going to go hold Alt, slide it all to the way to the right. Let's see those eyes, and there we go. On the other hand, if we had shot this at nighttime and we needed to reduce the noise that was caused by high ISO, you can always go noise reduction over here, and it's going to make the image kind of look a little bit painterly and blurry. You don't really want that, so we're just going to go ahead and get rid of that. So we're back to this. And here we go. Effects. Now, this is where you would add your vignette. If you wanted to add a vignette, I'm not going to, at least not this way. But in case we wanted that look, you know, you could do that. It actually looks kind of cool. So we're going to keep it now that we've looked at it. But again, you can go the other way. It's going to give you this halo thing. I've actually never used this ever in my life. I mean, if I wanted this like kind of dehaze look, I'd use the dehaze tool. But all right, whatever. We're going to do this. Calibration. Now, here's another opportunity to mess with colors. I mean, I guess this is to calibrate the picture. If the color, I really don't know what this area is for, but it does change colors of things. Like you can add greens into the shadows. Look how wild this is. So sometimes I actually do come in here, and you know what I mean. I'm adding -24 greens into the shadows, and if I'm not mistaken, I just saw some. Yeah, there you go. This right here. That is basic. That is a chromatic aberration. Why does my brain do that? I actually have to go click it back. But anyways, that is chromatic aberration. If you see here these halos, that's what you want to avoid. Most cheap lenses will do this. Some expensive GM or whatever art lenses won't do this. I don't know what it is on the other brands. Okay, so we're going to go in the red primaries. Just see what it does. See if you push it all the way right. She gives her that nice skin tone right here. The greens primary. Look at that. Would you just look at it? All right, blue primary. No, we're going to leave that one alone. Okay, so now we got to look. Let's check our work. We are night and day from where we were. But it doesn't stop here, guys. I like to get really into the details of things. Guys, typically I would do some skin retouching, but we're going to do skin retouching as its own separate video. So likely what will happen is I will retouch her skin, and then I'll come back and show you guys the finished product. But before we even get there, we're going to zoom in 100% into her eyes. As you can see, she has very nice eyes. And we're going to select the brush. And here we can go under effects. We can use iris enhance and just select our eyes and color in her eyes. Now, if you guys really want to see what you guys are doing, I think O will show you the mask that you guys are painting in. Now, what I like to do is take the O off, bring exposure a little bit up. Basically what I do is I push it till it looks unrealistic. That looks like a vampire, and then bring it back a little bit more. Now we're going to bring the highlights all the way up and leave it at that. Now we're going to jump and do the skin retouching. I like to do skin retouching in Photoshop. If you want to know how to take this into Photoshop, even though I'm not going to show you how to retouch the skin today, basically what you would do, if you have an active Photoshop license, you would right click the image once it's at this point and go edit in Photoshop 2022, and I'll be right back with the skin retouched. Again, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the before one more time and show you guys the after. That is what I would call a completed image, guys. And again, if you guys do have any questions of things that you guys might still not be clear about, feel free to leave a message down below. That's going to be it for today on today's tutorial. Next time, we're going to touch on skin retouching. There are a few different techniques. You could even do it right in Lightroom if you're trying to do it in a pinch. I prefer to do it in Photoshop. But again, guys, that's going to be it for me today. I hope you guys enjoyed and learned even one thing for today. Now, if you guys want to go ahead and drop a comment, let me know what you guys actually thought was the most helpful thing I taught you guys today. And again, I'd really appreciate it if you guys can support the channel by giving me a subscription. It helps me out a lot, and it's also free. Take care, guys.